As we welcome in our 1320 Kings insider and creator of the Kings Beat, James Ham. James, how good is life covering the Sacramento Kings right now?
It's funny if they somehow win on Sunday, that will be the first 6 game win streak that I've ever covered.
Wow.
They've never
13
won
years?
six in a row in 13 years. So yeah, we got to go way back to find that, and it's crazy. I mean, it's fun to watch. I
Do we
think
know
the
when it is? Is it 2005, 6? Is that the year that the last
I think it's
6 games?
earlier. I
Oh,
think I think the last time they won 8 out of 10, 8 out of 10 was 2005. I think that's what Brendan just said on the pod. But I think it was 03, 04, something like I don't know. I haven't gone
Wow.
back and looked. But like people that's so long ago. That's my one of my sons wasn't even born and he's 15. So yeah, I mean that's wild that we have to go back that far. Yeah, 2004 for a 6 game win streak. That's what someone's putting up in the chatty house.
Right.
So that's crazy, and they've got it just sitting right there in front of them. But I'm having a great time because the fans are having a great time. It just adds that element. There's nothing worse than covering a game where like there's cardboards like cutouts in the stands and that's it. There's nothing worse than watching 7,000 people file into a building because no one wants to go watch a team. That's horrible. And this is like we're seeing the growth and this organic like bubbling up that is the Sacramento Kings, and they're drawing their fans back in so quickly, and all of the extras are super fun from the Band-Aid to the beam to everything else. I really I'm excited for the franchise because it's a long time coming.
you could hear the excitement in your voice.
the the question I've asked a couple of different people like yourself, James, Jason Jones, and a couple other guys that have been around this team for a long time and saw a couple of good starts. We talk about, I think it was 14 with Mike Malone. They started 5-1. Jaeger up until the All Star break and what they were able to do in 2019. And I was just asking and trying to figure out what makes this one feel like it's different than those other two. I have my thoughts about it, but what are your thoughts? What makes this one feel different than those two?
Okay, so a couple of things. Number one, this team could be 8-0 on this stretch, or they could be they could be like rolling even better than they are. The two losses are tough, right?
Mm.
So that would be the first thing. I'd say the second thing is what we saw last night in post game, and I they brought out Malik Monk, and he said it like, "Hey, yeah, coach said we weren't very good offensively tonight, but we're getting better." And then Trey Lyles came out and said, "Yeah, we're not great on offense tonight." And then I asked Trey Lyles. I looked at the box score. I'm like, "Who in the world told you you weren't good on offense tonight?" First of all, you scored 130 points, so
Mm.
that's one thing. But like the Kings shot 57.8% from the field,
Yeah,
40% from three, and 91.7%
you said
from
that to Sabonis
the
because
line.
Sabonis started laughing like, "Oh my God, those were our numbers."
Yeah, he said those were numbers. He's like, and coach said we weren't good. Damn, like, like that's not okay. And I said the same thing to Mike Brown, and Mike Brown started laughing. And I said the same thing to Trey Lyles. They're just like, wait a sec, coach said we weren't good offensively, and like, it's one of the most complete offensive games the Sacramento Kings have played in the last 2 decades. And like coach said, it's not good enough. I mean, they had 28 assists, only 13 turnovers. Like they were really, really good. Now, did I agree that the ball got sticky at times and things kind of went haywire here and there? Sure. But at the end of the day, that team rolled up. They won by 18, and it didn't feel like they were going to win by 18, but they won by 18.
Yeah.
They dropped a team and they've scored, what is it, something crazy like 183 I mean 283 points over the last 2 games.
Jeez.
That's wild.
Mm. Wow.
Um, yeah, you said it didn't feel like, and Mike Brown's thinking because the game was sloppy for a while. Um,
Yeah.
it was a lot of just back and forth between the two, but then there was a moment, and offensively, we credit it to De'Aaron Fox and Malik Monk. But it feels like it all started with Donovan Mitchell and what Donovan Mitchell was doing defensively himself, and then what he was yelling at De'Aaron Fox and the rest of the team to do defensively. And it felt like from that moment on, De'Aaron took the game over with Malik Monk, and it was done.
Yeah, Davion, not Donovan, but that's
No, it was Donovan last night. I don't know if it did Donovan. He made his way to
Sacramento. He's part of it.
Yeah,
Part of it all. Yeah. So Davion, yeah, I think he brought some energy, and it was either 2 or 3 offensive fouls he drew like in a short span. He took the ball to the rack once or twice. You could see his confidence building, and I think like really the cool thing about this team that Fox talked about it, but it's also something that I'll go back that the coaches have talked about, like when they come through Sacramento in the past. Like if you can get like 2 or 3 guys on a roster that can go for 30 at any moment, then it makes life difficult. But when you go up against a team that like 7 guys can get you 25 on any given night, that makes it so incredibly hard to stop. And I every night we're seeing someone new step up. And, I think Trey Lyles like had a big moment in the game last night. The game before was Terrence Davis. I mean, I talked to somebody within the Kings too the other day, and they said, do you realize that the Kings scored 153 points on Tuesday night? Terrence Davis had 31 points. No one else on the roster scored 20. How do you get to 153 when no one else scores 20? 39 assists. And again, you look at 39 assists, how crazy a number that is. 8 Sacramento Kings players had 3 or more assists. Like, I don't even think I've ever seen something like that where 8 different guys have 3 or more assists in a game. And it's absolutely crazy that we're seeing someone new step up every night that, Herter can burn you, and Monk can burn you, and Fox and Sabonis and Harrison Barnes is come back to life, where, Keegan Murray will have a moment where he just goes nuts. But then you got Terrence Davis and you got Trey Lyles. All these guys are giving you moments that are really strong. And, Davion will have his moment too, where all of a sudden he steps up. He had the game where he put 24 when Fox got hurt. It's this sharing is caring mentality, but it's really also is that they're unselfish, that no one is bigger than the team. And it's really quickly that this has happened, but how do you get a team that's like has a new coach, a new offensive system, all of these new players, and they're number 2 in offensive rating in the league? They lead the league in 2-point field goal percentage. They're 6th in 3-point field goal percentage. Like, what do you take away from them? How do you stop them? And I just it's a fledgling offense. It's only going to get better and more efficient. That doesn't mean that they're going to like be this incredible, like over the top, like the greatest offense we've ever seen. But they can get stronger and they can get better and they can get more consistent and more reliable. And those are things that I think that they will do over the course of the season.
The thing that I keep saying about it every game, I said it going into last night's game. I said it going into the Brooklyn game. I'll say it about going into Sunday's game. It's starting to become a situation where these teams play against the Kings, and I'm not saying they're unbeatable by any means, but it's like, all right, well, how are you going to keep up? How are you going to keep up with the Kings? Because they're getting 120. That's what they average. Probably some nights they're going to end up getting 125, 130. You got enough horses to keep up? And I think a lot of times when you play teams like San Antonio and Brooklyn without Kyrie and a couple other guys, they just can't keep up with what the Kings do offensively. And that's before we get into if the Kings are able to improve on the defensive end. But they put so much pressure on their opponent with how they're able to score right now. That's defense in itself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think I'll add this. Like, we can say that anyone can beat you and all this stuff, but realistically, the speed of De'Aaron Fox is what changes everything. And the center of the universe big that is Domantas Sabonis changes everything. And all of these guys are playing so incredibly well off of those guys. Like the number, the Herter crazy number that we're hearing that, on passes from Sabonis coming into last night was like 22 of 28, like over 80%. I think that number took a hit last night because Herter didn't have a great shooting game. But Fox shooting 48% from catch and shoot threes. Like just go around all of them. They're feeding off of this draw them into the middle of the key and kick out for wide open shots. The Kings have more open looks than any team in the league, and that's by design. Like they are looking for wide open looks and wide open players. We've seen a handful of those moments where they sling the ball around, and it's just the most beautiful thing you've ever seen. Like where the ball hits 5 different players within 2 seconds and a guy laces a three. And you're just like, oh man, that was sweet to watch. And, again, that's what I'm talking about. It's only going to get better because when we look at the offensive structure that they have right now, they have, like maybe 2 or 3 variables off of each of their moves. And it's why we keep seeing these moments where, like Chimezi Metu last night tried to hit Malik Monk cutting baseline. The game before, somebody at Herter tried to hit, I think it was Metu going baseline, and they're not connecting fully. Well, it's because they're going through sort of the options on each of the plays. Each of those plays at the end of the day will have like 12 different options. It'll take like 2 years to get there, but for right now, they're at like 2 or 3 options. It's only going to get more intriguing and more complicated as far as time goes on. And the chemistry will be tested, but the better their chemistry is, the better we're going to see this offense get and more sort of efficient and complete.
Hey, real quick, I just saw something funny. Gilbert in the chat brings up something that I forgot about. He said, whoever put the bet on the Kings winning the chip might have known something. Remember how random and like everybody started tweeting at NBA Central.
Yeah.
Somebody put such and such on the Kings to win the title. Well, damn. I ain't saying they're winning the title, but if they win the title, the NBA's fixed.
It's probably the Mattress King. The Mattress King, like trying to take another wheelbarrow into his plane.
Mattress Mac. Mattress Mac.
Like, wasn't it like a $75,000 bet or something on the Kings winning? It was a lot of money. It was a lot of money.
It was a lot of money.
It's funny, James. You were talking about the way that the ball is moving, and I've waited since Tuesday night to see if Zach Lowe was going to include the Sacramento Kings on his list that drops every Friday, and indeed he did. It's titled the Sacramento Kings Red Velvety Offense. But he said the Kings sprint through cuts, they smash people with screens on and off ball, and they're setting oodles of them, sometimes simultaneously on either side of the floor, shooter zoning everywhere. It is a nonstop cyclone around the Fox Domantas Sabonis 2-man game. But here's the important line. There is nothing in the numbers suggesting the Kings offense is a fluke. And then he goes on to praise Kevin Herter.
I told you guys this in early in the season. The numbers are telling us that this offense is great. Like that's the numbers were telling us that the whole time. Like the effective field goal percentage, the true shooting numbers, the assist percentage, all of it is showing that this offense is great. Now, again, it's gotta be more than 14 games or 16 games or even 30 games. It's gotta be you gotta keep going. You gotta make this your identity and then quietly keep getting better on the defensive end. And like I think the best thing that I've seen is not only is the offense like going like this, but the defense is having a really slow climb. And
so the next line in that article, James, is there are some signs, mostly opponent shot selection. Their defense might soon improve from its current number 26 spot.
Yeah. So I would tell you this too. Like they're right around 114 defensive rating like 2 weeks ago. And it's stayed right there. I think they're like 114.4. They're still at like right at 114. Which means that they haven't gotten worse. They've improved incrementally. And I talked to you guys about this the other day. I think one of the ways we see it is Sabonis isn't getting in foul trouble all the time. That we're not seeing the Kings send every team to the line like crazy amounts of times, and they're playing defense with their feet, with their chest, not with their hands. But also, we're starting to see deflections start to climb. We're starting to see the steal numbers climbing. This team is not going to have big shot blocking numbers because the shot blockers they do have don't play. They don't get on the court, and that's okay because, again, I talked about this to you guys before about how good the Golden State Warriors were last year, even though they didn't have a rebounder who averaged over 7.3 rebounds per game. They finished second in rebounding. And even though they didn't have like a natural shot blocker, they still have the number 2 defensive rating in the league. So there's potential for this thing to improve without adding another piece, but I don't think that's what we'll see. I think it's very obvious what this team needs. I'm sure that there's already a list being created of players that fit what the Kings need, and I'm sure that Monty McNair is aggressively looking at ways to get this team over the hump. But now he's faced with the other question that we had at the beginning of the year, which is that dark question of what if they're good? And you get to the trade deadline and you can't trade and you can't make a move to make your team better or lock something up long term because you don't want to upset the apple cart and you don't want the Amon Shumpert thing to happen where you were rolling, you trade Shumpert, and you kind of lost your spirit. And so, Monty McNair's got a tough job ahead of him, but the job he's already done, like, I think deserves a major, major hat tip. Like what he's created here, the pieces he's brought in so far, I think
Doesn't deserve
really,
a hat tip, it deserves an extension.
yeah. No, I would agree with you. It deserves an extension, deserves an extension now.
Let me ask you about, since you kind of brought up, more pieces. There are rumors circulating around the league. Shams is talking about the Hawks looking to move on, or they would be willing to engage people in John Collins conversations, and and obviously Jay Crowder is out there in Phoenix. Is either one of those guys somebody that you're talking about? When you say, hey, let's see if we can get better and secure some stuff, or like, what do you think about those two options?
Yeah. First of all, I don't know how John Collins is having such a bad season. I hadn't looked at his numbers, but the fact he's averaging only 12.6 points, 7.7 rebounds, and he's shooting 22.7% from three. This is typically a knockdown 3-point shooter. He's been a very good 3-point shooter throughout his career. The key to John Collins is number one, he's young. He's 25 years old, but also that he's under contract long term. Like if I'm the Kings and I'm gonna risk anything at this point, you have two avenues you can take, right? You can try to swing for the fence and add this big piece, or you can try to like tinker and bring in someone without upsetting the rest of what you're trying to do. So Collins is under contract 25.3 next year, 26.6 a year after, and 26.6 the year after that. So you're looking at a guy who's under contract for 3 years. And those numbers, those 25 million, 26.5 million numbers, they shouldn't scare people because the salary cap, the NBA salary cap is about to go up, not this next year, but the year after, like over 150 million. And then the television deal is being reworked, and that could make that salary cap jump even more. So when you have these players who are already under contract, like a Kevin Huerter, and then you can add these other pieces, then you've got some good stuff happening, especially, if you're going to trade for a 25-year-old guy who's under contract for another 3 years after this year. That would tie him up to the same exact contract length that basically Fox and Herter are already under, but also Keegan Murray, like most of your team. You could actually be building something for the long term. But in order to do that, this is where I kind of bring in this variable. Are you a team that's going to use someone like Rashawn Holmes and go find a better piece that sort of rebalances your roster and give him an opportunity to go somewhere else and get a fresh start, but also bring in a piece that might work for you and what you're working on the fringe of your rotation and your roster? Or are you going to do something that really has a potential to either work really well and put you over the top for the next 5 years, or like cost you a bunch of positivity in the locker room? And that's a really tough decision for Monty McNair to make because he knows it. He knows that the chemistry, that he knows that if you're going to make a move for John Collins, it likely includes Harrison Barnes. And what does that mean for the team? Because Harrison Barnes is more than just a player. He's a guy, he's a leader. He's a community guy. He does a lot of good work for this team. So it really does come down to like these two decisions. Like, do I just tinker and hope that I do enough, or do I maybe take a little bit of a step back right now to take a massive step forward in the future? And again, the Kings were all in on John Collins last year, and like from what I know, they had come close to making a deal for John Collins at the deadline when they picked up Sabonis. So it's not like that those two teams haven't had conversations. They had conversations this summer and brought in Kevin Herter. So yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting to see where they're at.
Isn't Kevin Herter the first person you go to? Hey, what's the deal with your boy John Collins there in Atlanta? Like, what's his vibe like?
Yeah,
I'd
yeah,
ask him.
yeah. I would ask him. I would ask. I think Alex Lynn was there with them for a little while. Like you can get some good research, but also like remember that I don't know how long ago it was, but Wes Wilcox was also in Atlanta, and I don't know if they
That's
overlapped,
right.
but there's certainly some time there where it's possible that they did, and I would have to look it up. I don't know why. I don't know,
Oh,
the exact specifics and dates and stuff on that. But I would also tell you that like this is a moment where the Kings have some big decisions to make, and what do they do in those in those moments, because it's you want to set yourself up long term. That's where I would say like Jay Crowder is nice and might be impactful, especially if you're only giving up someone who's out of your rotation like Rashawn Holmes.
yeah.
But he's a rental. Like, are you going to go all in on a rental, and or are you going to go get that last piece that might fit for you long term? And that's a big decision.
Real quick, KC, we've got tickets to see the Sacramento Kings and Detroit on Sunday. Marvin Bagley's triumphant return to the Golden One Center. Cheer that man in his future endeavors. We've got your tickets right now. Caller number 3, 916-909-1320. And if all goes according to plan, you could cheer Marvin Bagley at the starting lineup, and then you could chant "Light the Beam" somewhere in the third quarter.
There you go. That's the plan.
That should be the appropriate order of operations for Sunday's game.
That is the plan. James, I'll ask you the hard-hitting questions. What would you do right now? Say they were all on the table. Say Phoenix wanted to, work a deal with you. Say Atlanta wanted to work a deal, and you were Monty McNair. Is getting Collins or Crowder worth potentially messing up what you have right now?
It's tough. I mean, it's early in the season, but like, I mean, you got to at least consider it. You got to consider it if it's for a piece that can last. And I think the one thing about Collins is a great offensive player. He's actually a good rebounder. I think the fact that Keegan Murray has proven that he might be able to play more three is huge. I think that Kevin Herter can play more three, so that kind of opens you up to do something like that, where you're not as concerned with the small forward position moving forward. And then like look, Monty McNair is the only one. Well, Monty McNair and Harrison Barnes and his agent, they're the only ones that know like what exactly could possibly work out between those two. If you could keep Harrison Barnes in a Kings uniform for the next 3 years, and he's going to be the player he is today, not the player we saw in the first week of the season, then you're talking about 31, 32, 33-year-old Harrison Barnes after this season. He still has a lot of game left in him. And so that's one thing that I would look at. Like, what is the chance of me being able to retain Harrison Barnes? And only those guys can know, like, how far advanced those talks had gotten at some point, whether they had extension talks, whether, those extension talks could be brought up again at the end of this season. But if I know for a fact that I'm losing Harrison Barnes at the end of the year, I'd rather bite the bullet right now, today, and give myself 65 games to refigure out this lineup and work through it. And so I guess my answer would be, yeah. I mean, if the player is right, the fit is right, and it's going to be a long-term situation in Sacramento, someone under contract who fits the age arc of your team. Again, we can talk about this all day long, but like Herter, Fox, Monk, Davion Mitchell, all 24, Sabonis 26. Harrison Barnes is a one veteran who's at 30, who's actually playing major rotational minutes. You tuck a guy like John Collins in there at 25 years old, and he fits what you're doing today and tomorrow and the year after that and the year after that.
I've got questions. We're going to expand on this conversation when we return. The Lakers are getting desperate. Desperate-er. Apparently, they're monitoring the Miles Bridges situation.
Oh my gosh.
We'll step out. We'll come back
Jeez.
much more with James Ham when we return here on Sacramento Sports Leader ESPN 1320. I caught James's cringe face right as we were going to commercial. Like, oh man, oh that's bad. Yeah, that's bad.
They're monitoring it.
Oh, that's bad. Meaning we're going to float this out there and see how people respond to it. And
Yeah.
yeah, not good.
You know what they should have done? They should have waited a couple of days and seen if Twitter died, and then it's easier to monitor it then, because then you don't have the fan reaction and yeah, that is, like, again, Marcus Andrade in the chatty house said that's terrible. I agree. Like,
Yep.
I don't know what it means. Like, again, I think that, people in life should get an opportunity to redeem themselves and to have second chances. But that doesn't mean that you get to redeem yourself and have your second chance on, in an NBA league. Like, I think you can redeem yourself in a lot of ways in life, and it doesn't have to be for representing a city and a franchise and everything else. And like the photos were
Yeah, that's the thing. Sometimes with stuff like that, it's best to just kind of leave it. Like, but
Yeah.
when you've got photos attached to it as a part of the police report, man,
well, photos and all this.
I just don't know how you can rationalize that.
Man, the videos, which she went on social media with the kids and everything else. Like, again, like in the EPL, like Man U has dealt with it with Mason Greenwood, and like I don't think he'll ever play again. Maybe I'm wrong, but like there's a really high potential that he'll never play again. I don't know, again, like he's so young as far as, well, actually both of those guys, but Bridges and Greenwood, they're both so young. But what do you do? I don't know. Tall Chinese guy, why would anyone take a flyer on Jonathan Isaac? Just in all honesty.
Yeah.
Like, I love who Jonathan Isaac could have been as a player, but has he played in
Jesse
the
had a great
2000s?
line one day. Jonathan Isaac is like a myth at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, he's Mr. Snuffleupagus, like from Sesame Street.
Mm-hmm.
Not everyone understands that reference, but he's a fictional character. Yeah, like I don't know that he actually truly exists, and his contract isn't great. Like, they did actually pay him. Yeah, that dude hasn't played. Oh my gosh. Oh my god. Let's see.
Isaac the Grouch.
Here's a stat for you.
Okay.
Jonathan Isaac has played one game in the 2000s. Oh, no. 3 games. I'm sorry. 3 games in the 2000s. Since we went from 2019 to 2020s.
I got
in the 2020s.
I know what you meant. Yeah.
Yeah. So 3 games. 3 games total.
Starting to get more and more grays in my beard. I ain't gonna lie to you.
Imagine what they're gonna look like in a month.
Well, look, I ain't gonna lie to you. I might come in these studios one day and it'd be jet black.
No, do it.
Yeah,
you're gonna wash that gray right out of your beard.
I don't know if I'm ready for a bunch of random gray. Now, like if I had like a streak of gray, like right here only, like yeah, that'd be kind of cool, like a little skunk or something like that. But just little random gray hairs everywhere. Nah, I don't know.
I spray my hairline in, bro. Just embrace it. Come on, man.
When I let it grow, it's all white on the edges, and I'm doing no shave November. I'm not shaving the I'm shaving the sides.
About to see you coming with the beard.
Let it go. Yeah, I might. It'll probably be down to like here by.
So do you shave first? Like, are you shaving first and then do you shave everything first and then you just let it grow for the whole month?
No, like I'm shaving my sides and
Oh,
underneath every day.
oh,
Yeah. But like the goat, I don't really grow in on the sides. It's funny,
I don't grow in
me and
anyway.
my son are both doing it. So my son has like he's got a little beard growing. He can actually grow on the sides. I can't grow on the sides. And they mess with him at work. They
I'm
think he's
jealous
more
of a great beard. I
yeah,
can't.
he's more saucy now with his beard. They call him Bearded Toby.
Good.
It took a long time. Like I think when I had Reese, that's when I started to be able to like connect the beard somewhat. It took a
Yeah.
while.
It takes a lot of patience. I'm not built for that.
And Bob says like when I shave, I drop 10 years off my age.
Oh,
And he's totally right. I do. I look much younger when I shave.
You definitely
yeah,
do.
yeah, I
Yeah,
agree.
you
Yeah.
definitely do.
Yeah.
I
What did
appreciate
Jesse
it.
just say?
He said he started.
We can talk about this too.
All right, we're coming back.
So I'm gonna start that.
The office is listening. I can't grow a beard, bro. It's not happening.
I mean, it can happen.
It's multiple colors. Like that's the thing. Like it'll grow in like black and gray, like a little bit of blonde. Like it's all over the place.
I'll pay you $5. The streets want to see it.
$5?
Yeah, $5.
$5.
I mean, walking around looking crazy for $5?
You know what? I'll match that.
Oh, now it's $10.
I'm in. We got $15.
All right, now. All right, now think about it. $15. I ain't gonna sleep on $50.
Slammy's in.
Hey. Okay. Well, now you guys have got my attention because I don't got that Kenny Caraway money. So I'll
That's hilarious.
dye your beard. Yeah, I'll come in looking like Hollywood Hogan one day.
Oh, that'd be amazing.
Oh, come on, man.
We talked about this one other time. Like I'm not a ginger. I'm a strawberry blonde, right? So Kevin Herter's hair is way darker than my hair, like naturally, and like it's impossible. Like I couldn't wash the gray out because if you go look at like the redhead kit, like the red never looks right. You literally look like you like tried to use a pen and color
Look like
your beard.
James doesn't know who Seamus is, but for everybody else who does, that's funny. Now
Yeah.
we're starting a GoFundMe for this is absurd.
There we go.
This is ridiculous. I honestly don't know how long. It's. This is absurd. You guys are ridiculous.
What if Slammy sells it?
Okay, if Slammy sells it. Slammy, if you sell it, I'll grow my beard. If you sell it, I'll sell it to somebody, and I got you. But you got to sell it. We got to make money off of it.
That's amazing.
Then the haircut's gonna get more. My barber's dope. He could probably make it.
Oh, it'll be fine. It'll be fine.
Yeah, he'll cut it in.
You'll be. No, I'm telling you, you're gonna be like, didn't Blake Griffin grow a beard?
I always fear like looking like Steph Curry. Like Steph's beard is like a lot. Like it doesn't grow in all of the way.
But when it's
like
when it's
red and
up,
black.
though, when it's lined up,
Does he ever line up his beard? I
Every
thought
now
he's
and
like
then.
once you get to a certain amount of money, you don't have to line your beard up
I know,
anymore.
right? I still
Unless you're Rick Ross. If you're Rick Ross,
Rose.
Rick Ross gets his beard groomed every day.
Rose absolutely.
Outside of that, morning glory. Goodness gracious. All right. Okay, back to the important matters. Or the other.
Damien, you said we had some things to talk about when it came to acquisitions and maybe breaking up this team. I wanted to hear your thoughts.
So to be clear, James, you said you'd make the move right now. I want to make sure I got this framed right. If you'd be willing to take the step back right now to take a leap, as you say, forward later.
Yeah, because I think what you're doing right now is you're taking a step back in chemistry to take a step forward. But that again, it would really depend if I knew all of the conversations behind the scenes. If I knew exactly what my odds were of bringing Harrison Barnes back on, or even extending Harrison Barnes. But like if you knew what it was that you could do and how long it would, how much money it would take, and whether it's a 30% chance or 72% chance that you can bring him back, whatever it might be, then like if I had all of the numbers in front of me and I knew exactly what it was, I would really consider it, because I think right now you're giving yourself enough leeway, like enough time to make it work, to let the pieces simmer in the pot and kind of come out the other side. And Corey Spiteri brings up in the chatty house a really good point, that uh, that the Kings and the Hawks already have a transaction on the books, and the Kings, as of right now, they owe the Hawks a 2014, 2024 first round pick that's it's top 14 protected. Then in 25, it's top 12 and top 10 protected in 2026, right? Well, maybe you could take protections off. So as opposed to the Kings having to give up a whole bunch of extra, draft capital, maybe they can already work with the capital that they already have that's owed to the Hawks. So, I mean, I think you're going to have to give up something of value as far as draft capital when it would, if you were to do something crazy like just a straight up Harrison Barnes and, Alex Len for John Collins. You're probably going to have to throw in a first round pick, but maybe you can get away with pulling a protection off the 2024 pick and then freeing up all your other draft picks in case you need them down the road, or a 2024 pick and say a couple of second rounders. I don't think it
I
would
don't like
cost you.
any of
I don't,
this.
I don't like that
any
either.
of
And
this.
then I would also ask the question, James, because I see you working, but if I go to Atlanta and Wes Wilcox or and Monty go to those guys and say, look, man, we're giving you a starter for one of the best offenses in the league. What we got to give up more for? Like what you need picks for? Where you gonna get that from? Where else you gonna get a starter? On one of the top teams without us. Why we got to give you a pick and all this other stuff?
Yeah, because you've had, and this is where I get stuck, James. You've put this dude's name out there. You signed him to an extension and then immediately said he was on the trading block.
Yeah.
Like those things don't get out, as well as anybody. Those things don't get out there on accident. You don't even want him. So you can't negotiate with me. That's where I get stuck. Is like they clearly don't want John Collins there, so you can't negotiate with me.
Well, here's what my response would be. First of all, he's 25 versus a 30-year-old Harrison Barnes. Secondly, he's under contract for this year and 3 more, as opposed to just year for this
Is
year
that a
for
good
Harrison
thing,
Barnes.
though? Are we positive that's a good thing?
Right. The Hawks don't want nobody under contract.
Well, no, the Hawks. The problem the Hawks have is that they've got 2 max money players, and they've got a big time player and big money player in their center. They still have Bogdanovich for a couple more years. Like they have a lot of money tied up here, and that's usually the problem. And they have DeAndre Hunter coming up for extension, and so they have to pay other players. And again, if you're the Kings and you have to worry about that as well. There's going to come a point where you're going to have to pay Domantas Sabonis 2 years from now, and you're gonna have 4 years from now, you're gonna have to pay De'Aaron Fox more money, and so you're hoping that the salary cap continues to accelerate and go up. And if the salary cap's going up, that means that the BPI, the basketball related income, has skyrocketed, which means that they're still making a ton of money. But if if the NBA salary cap hits like 160, 180 million in the next 4 years, because a television contract comes in, it could hit 200 million. And in that case, like players that are making, X amount of dollars right now, they're bargain deals, so you just have to be cautious when you're doing it and hope that it works out. But yeah, I mean, I like John Collins as a player. I think he can be a long-term fixture. And I also think that, Keegan has done enough to show you he can play the 3, and he might be able to stick at the 3. Kevin Huerter has done enough to make you feel like he can play a bunch of time there too, and you might be able to mask that position, especially if you still have Terrence Davis. Does that free up your money and your sort of your expendable income next offseason to bring back a guy like Terrence Davis?
Definitely a prisoner of the moment. I understand that. As long as these vibes are how they are, I'm not messing with
It's not the idea of a move that bothers me. It's the John Collins thing that I just constantly get hung up on. Like I don't. Maybe I'm just not sold on John Collins. Maybe it's the team that he's on. Maybe it's the fit. Maybe it's the fact that he is in trade rumors nonstop for years. It's just
The guy who's out there that we kind of haven't talked about as well. At least I saw his name floating out there is a PJ Washington.
Yeah. No,
I think that I like PJ Washington.
I do too. But again, you're gonna have to give up something in the PJ Washington swap. I think you
Can't
start.
have the beam. The beam is untradeable. It's got a no trade clause.
Yeah, yeah. But was it like 2 weeks ago or a week and a half ago that we discussed the potential for maybe Ben Simmons? And you got one look at Ben Simmons and you're like, oh, no, 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 I'm not touching that guy with 10-foot pole. Nope, I'm good.
I actually thought he played good on Tuesday.
Played good.
He played good
last night too.
I think he played good, and you still thought, nope. Because of the knee, because of the everyone making excuses behind the scenes, and some of his the murmurs coming out of there, whether what's happening is real and what's not. I don't like that all that's going on for this kid, because I really do think he's taken a beating and all this thing. I really like PJ Washington. I think he would be a really nice fit, and I think that that's a team that could still use a Rashawn Holmes. And I think that would make a lot of sense, but PJ Washington doesn't make any money. And they don't have a bunch of extra cap space. So you'd have to work out it'd be a multiplayer deal. And again, I don't think you have to give up a first round pick for a PJ Washington because he's an expiring contract or he's due an extension this summer. I think he'll be a restricted free agent. But at the same time, he's not under contract long term, and you are going to have to figure out how much he's going to want, how much he's going to get paid. Where a guy like Rashawn Holmes is locked into a very specific deal that would make a lot of sense for a team like Charlotte. Complicated. I think you could get it done, but the problem is they're going to have to send something else back as well to balance the salaries, and that might be a problem.
I think that one of the many great things about where the Sacramento Kings are is this is all fine conversation, especially given the reports from The Athletic and all of that stuff. There's no reason to believe the Sacramento Kings need to make a move right now. Yeah. No one, of course, is saying this team is perfect. No one is saying this team, oh, it's perfect as it is. Let's ride this thing out. I don't think that's what anyone's saying, but I don't feel like an urgency of, man, we've looked so bad here. Because I'm on the floor. The Kings have looked so bad out here. Yeah. The Kings have looked so bad that they've got to do this. They've got to do that. I don't feel that way.
Yeah.
I'm good. I'm good. The trade deadline is a long way away. Yeah. Let's see what this team continues to look like. They've won games with Harrison Barnes not having the best nights. Mm-hmm. So that kind of that you can use that, James, as a talking point in either direction. Well, if Harrison has a bad game and we win, what's the big deal if we trade him? If Harrison has a marginal performance and we win, what's the big deal if we trade him? So there's probably a lot of different ways that you can go with that. I just think Harrison, Barnes, the person, is very important to this team.
I think so too. I've said it for years. It's really difficult to trade Harrison Barnes from this team. The only reason you do it is if you don't think you can retain him. That's it. And I mean, eventually,
I'm still not sure that you do it.
Eventually, he's going to age out. But you can't lose him for nothing because you're close enough to the salary cap that him dropping off and the other salaries accelerating that you have, it's not going to leave you enough to go get another player. Maybe you get a $10 million a year mid-level exemption player. Maybe you get Sasha Vezenkov to come over and fill up some of the void, but that's not enough. And
if Harrison went to Monty, or Harrison's people went to Monty right now and said, "Look, we want to stay here," does that alleviate any thought you have of trading him? Is it just the short term?
Oh yeah. No, that to me is totally it.
So if they say, "Hey,
he wants to stay here," but it's got to be within reason too.
If he's like, I want to sign a 2-year extension right now. I want to stay here.
I would probably want the 3. But what's the offer? Are we talking 3 years 45, 3 years 48, like that in itself? Okay.
What's he at now? 8.
He's at 18, but he's on a declining scale contract. And this is the last year, but it's down to 18.3. So if you could do like 17, 16, and 15 over the next 3 years, which is, if I'm not mistaken, 48 million, then that would make sense. Like continue the declining scale contract with him, where he's still making a ton of money, and he's a smart guy who's already got his money invested in other things, and he's doing perfectly fine for himself. But that would be a deal where he's on a reasonable contract that at the end of the day is movable if you're the Kings. But again, like everything has to like fall into place and be right, and I need to make sure that this is where he wants to be. And his play early in the season, I have to at least like pause for a second and say I'm not 100% sure that this is, if he had his choice of where he wanted to be. But it's always going to be if the Kings win. Like he wants to be for, he's 30. He wants to play for a winner. He played for a winner when he was young, and he wants to get back to it. And I don't blame him. But at the same time, like you got to be good too. He's got to hold up his end of the bargain, because trading a guy who's averaging 16.4 points and 5.7 rebounds and shooting 39% from three is a lot easier than trading a guy who's averaging, less than 12 points or right around 12 points and shooting 25.5% from three. And, they're just different, it's a different value of player that you can go get for him.
Yeah. No, yeah, I completely understand. And, I thought about Harrison's game last night, 16 points, 4-7 from the field. I think he had 7 of 8 from the free throw line or whatever. And he's been playing well as of late. And, I thought about this, and I was part of it too. I was on here 4 hours asking, what's wrong with Harrison? What's wrong with Davion? Davion was a game changer last night with his defense. And I thought about some of the things that we also talked about, where we weren't sure if it was a fact of, Davion just not being as good as we thought, or Harrison not being as good as we thought, or was it a situation where these guys had a whole new system that they had to get used to, and it was going to take them 5-6 games to find where they could fit in the system, and also find their roles as this team. And it seems like it's the latter. It seems like, it just took some time to kind of figure out how they were going to go about this whole thing. And both of those guys are starting to settle into roles now with Mike Brown.
Yeah, look, I'll bring this point up. Over his last 5 games, Harrison Barnes is averaging 28.8 minutes per game, 14.8 points, 5.8 rebounds, 2.6 assists, 1.4 steals, and he's shooting 41.2% from three and 57.9% from the field. He's quietly recovered in the last 5 games and been really, really good. Like, I think people get, a little bit caught up in, even like how I phrased it there, that, if we talk about, if he's averaging the 16.4 versus the 11.6 or whatever he is right now, that's a big deal. But this Kings team doesn't need him to average 16.4. They really could use him to average around 14 and a half, 15. That's fine, where you at least know you're going to get production out of him. And, he's going to get to the free throw line 4 or 5 times a game, and he's going to hit 2 or 3 threes a game. That's like a pretty simple way to get to the point total that you're looking at. But they need that from him. And but again, they don't need 18 points a game from him. They don't need 16.4, especially with all these other players that they have. I think it's an interesting discussion too. We talked about it at the beginning of the season. Like, who did we think was going to be the third leading scorer, right? And I think it's materializing pretty quickly, but we're still seeing like this competitive race between a guy like Kevin Huerter and a guy like Malik Monk. And like, this team is going to have a bunch of guys right around 15 points a game. And that just makes them really potent. And like really, this team has a lot of upside.
James, Sunday, Detroit, 8th must-win game of the season.
Do I feel differently today?
Yeah. So it's 4-1 still. Kenny Caraway, 4-1, still a good run over those 5-game stretch.
It's a good run, but I need that 5-0.
I
need that 5-0.
Yeah. I think it's a big game. I got to be honest. I know people will look past Detroit. Detroit fights. I don't know if Cade Cunningham's going to play or not. I haven't looked, but yeah. And Isaiah Stewart's out, which is actually Isaiah Stewart's hurt the Kings a couple of times. But this is a big moment because there's such a huge difference between going on a 3-game road trip against Memphis, Atlanta, and Boston, riding a 6-game winning streak versus riding a 1-game losing streak. And you could see how quickly this thing can go from 8-7 to 8-10. And that's not what you want. You want to keep this thing rolling. So if you get up to, even if you get up to 9-6 here with that win, even if you lose 3 games in a row, you're still at 500 and you're still right there. And so I think it's a big
I
game.
I want this game for a different reason, because to me, they beat Detroit after LA, after, they got the one against Golden State and beating a on their deathbed Brooklyn team at the time. You've shed that playing down. You've shed that playing down to your competition and all that. And they didn't play great against the Lakers for part of it. They didn't play great last night against the Spurs either. But when it was time to correct ship, I never felt like they were going to lose that game. When it was time to correct ship in that fourth quarter, they did it. Yeah. And I think you take care of business against Detroit, you can shed that label. And at the same time, James, there's nothing I've seen over these 14 games that leads me to believe they're not capable of beating Memphis or Atlanta or even Boston the day after Thanksgiving. Yeah. And then, by the way, you come back, you got Phoenix, and you got an Indiana team who's playing really good. So again, there's no gimmies coming up. Like you've got some fights ahead, which is why Sunday is the 8th must-win game of the season.
That's right. Well, that, and I'll also point out they have yet to lose to a team that they should just beat. Yeah. They haven't lost yet. And that's a focus of Mike Brown, to stay in the moment, like make sure we're paying all of our attention to the team that is ahead of us. And that's huge. It's huge for this team.
Kings Beat podcast is out, or will be out.
It'll be out this afternoon. Yep.
It'll be out this afternoon. The Kings Beat podcast. Tell Sean to knock it off. Tell him to knock it off. Cheer up a little bit. Have some fun. Tell him to have some fun.
Stockholm syndrome. All of us.
The Kings Beat podcast, available wherever you get podcasts from. Check out thekingsbeat.com. Check out J Street Vibes as well, the latest edition of Corners of the Culture. Use the weekend to catch up on podcasts. We appreciate everyone who tuned in on the Odyssey app on 1320 a.m.